Welcome to another episode of the King Obed Podcast, where we dive deep into stories that resonate with us for transformation, growth, and living a life of purpose. Today's episode is one of the profound ones that we've ever had. My guest is a former real estate person and who in 2000 had a turn down of her life, and she faced acute respiratory distress syndrome that made her go into a near-death experience. She's transitioned from hell to heaven, and then she'll tell us the story of how all this whole journey began and what she has experienced as a person going through all these. Welcome to the King Obed Podcast, Kathy McDaniel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So in short, I always ask my guest, in short, who is Kathy McDaniel?
Who is Kathy McDaniel? She is a spiritual being having a human experience on earth.
Okay, you are a spiritual being having human experience on earth.
Just like you are.
Yes. Okay. That is a nice description of you, and to sum up actually who you are. So tell us, before your near-death experience in 2000, who were you? What were you doing?
What was I doing?
Yes,
I had retired pretty much, and I was living in Mendocino, California, and I got a phone call from my very best friend who said that he had been told he had leukemia and that he had to go to Seattle, Washington, and to a research hospital so they could try and save his life. He was only 53 years old and he needed 2 caregivers. And so he brought his wife, and then I joined them in Seattle, and we were going to take care of him when he went through these chemotherapy treatments. So that's why I was there.
Okay. So you, in 2000, you had this experience. You suffered acute respiratory distress syndrome, and in your memoir, you write about the fact that it led you to a near-death experience. Can you walk us through what actually happened to you?
Yes, after taking care of my friend for 9 months, I got very run down. I got the flu, which turned into the acute respiratory distress syndrome. They got me to the hospital in time, and then the doctor said, we're going to have to put you into an induced coma and try and save you because the syndrome does not react to antibiotics.
Yeah.
And so they said, we're going to give you this drug, we're going to put you out, and you're not going to be able to remember anything that happens because your brain's going to go offline, and hopefully we'll wake you up when you're better. Otherwise, you're toast, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. My family was there, and they had me on oxygen, and they trached me and put me out. And I just assumed that it would just be like a dreamless sleep, is what it was said to be. But that's not what happened. I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It means that your physical body slipped away, and you lost sensations, and you were into a deeper realm than this physical space that we find ourselves.
Oh yeah, it was
what
a coma.
actually happened?
It was a coma. Yeah.
It was a
so
coma.
That means it was a coma, and so your brain isn't working.
Okay.
But all of a sudden I woke up, and it was totally dark. And there was no sound, and I had no idea where I was or what had happened. And there was nothing to do but just kind of hang out and see what did happen. And eventually it started getting a little lighter, and I started hearing people moaning and screaming, and I couldn't tell if they were in the next room or what was going on. But as it got lighter, I could just see this swirling red fog. And then suddenly out of all that fog came a really nasty voice that said, do you know where you are? And I was rapidly trying to figure out where it might be, but all I could come up with was hell? And then this terrible voice just made this awful laugh of wah, like it was going to come get me. And so I just turned in the darkness and I started running. And eventually I had to stop because I didn't know if I was going to fall or what. But what happened after that was a sequence of segments. Very bright light would come up and I would find myself in a totally different place than I was a couple seconds ago. And usually they were dangerous situations. The first one was in a city that appeared to be all bombed out and people running around and fires and stuff. And that was very unsettling. But then there were like spooky people wandering around and there were it was very dangerous and I didn't know what to do. I tried to get out. I tried to climb a fence. I fell backwards and I thought, oh gosh, this is going to hurt. But then the lights would go out and then they'd come up again and I'd be in another totally different place. About the second or third time, it was obvious when I opened my eyes that there was like a demon being standing there, a Bigfoot or something. And he had a task that was impossible for me to finish. But he said if I could finish it, I could get out. And so I attempted to cut down all these blackberries that were bushes all over the place, which proved impossible. So then the lights went out and the lights came up and I would be in another place. And this happened many times. Another part of it would be that I would be on a dirt road with no stars, no moon, just a dusk, and then kind of like this reddish glow at the end of the horizon. And I would walk down this road having no idea where it was going or what I was going to run into. And there was a couple of unpleasant things that happened on that road also with zombie-like people that attacked me. And finally, after all these seemingly endless adventures, because there's no time over there, you really can't tell. It's always now. And so finally I got to the last one. I didn't know it was going to be the last one.
Yeah.
But there was a demon lady there that was treating a bunch of us ladies very badly. And I asked her, I says, I've been here such a long time, but this seems like such a horrible time, day, whatever's going on. I don't know. And she says, oh, well, it's Christmas on earth, and that's always the worst day in hell. And that's when it hit me that, that's where I probably was. And I thought, geez, I've always been such a, pretty good person. I don't really deserve to be here. I don't understand that. But so in an effort to make her angry, I started singing a Christmas carol, and it was away in a manger, no crib for his head. And I started to say the line where it's the little Lord. And as I stopped at that word because she jumped at me screaming to shut up. And all of a sudden I was like blasted into this existence of love and bliss and joy, just tumbling in this beautiful, sparkly light, this warm, loving light. And I just thought to myself, I don't know where I am, but I don't ever want to leave. This is just absolutely fabulous. But after a little while, it started to kind of settle down a little bit, and I could see my friend who I'd come to take care of, who had died the month before I had. Mm-hmm. And he was standing there with a big grin on his face, and he looked great. And after dying of leukemia, he did not look great on earth, I'll tell you, but he looked much younger, healthy. And I remember him showing me something in a big book. And I was looking at that and I said, no, that's going to be too hard. I want to stay here with you. I believe he was showing me that my life was only half over and I really had a lot that was left undone, because he came toward me when I asked him, come on, take me around and show me. This is obviously heaven and I want to go see it and enjoy it. Yeah. And he said, no, Mary Kay, you've got too much left to do. And that's when it dawned on me they were sending me back. And I did not want to go back. I didn't. And I just kept saying, no. And then I woke up out of the coma. And there was my family. And they were so happy to see me. And I was so unhappy to be back. And, of course, I couldn't speak. I had the trach in my throat. And I was still on oxygen. And I wasted away after 3 weeks, just living on a nasal tube with liquids in it. So I couldn't move. I could blink and move one finger. My muscle mass was gone. I weighed 86 pounds. And they kept telling me how happy they were I was back, how they'd prayed and prayed to bring me back, and they did. And I was so angry. I did not want to be there. And I thought, wow, I've got all this left to do, and I can't even move. I mean, it was like a really bad joke. So it took me, I was there in that hospital for a month, and then a rehabilitation hospital. I had to learn how to walk and crawl and feed myself and do that all over again, just like a baby, for another 4 weeks. And then I finally went home, but I was still haunted by what happened to me and why. I couldn't understand why that had happened to me and what it all meant. So there was nobody to listen. My family didn't want to hear about it. My therapist said she didn't know how to help me. And so it took 10 years for me to find the near-death experience people up in Seattle that it's called IANS, International Association of Near-Death Studies. So there's all these people that had these wonderful experiences, but nobody had anything like mine. And so somebody asked me why I always look so unhappy at the meetings when they were telling there's wonderful stories of angels and seeing their pets and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
They said, well, about 20% of the people that have a near-death experience have a distressing one, but they don't want to talk about it for obvious reasons. And they, coaxed me into telling my story. And so 15 years later, I'm still very involved with that group. I have a sharing group once a month to have the people who've had the distressing ones come and be able to tell their story in a safe place where nobody judges them. We accept what they say is true and give them support. And what we've learned, there's been a lot of research about this, and what the consensus is, number one, it's not that good people have good experiences and bad people have bad experiences. That's not true at all. But what we're finding is that a lot of very, very, very religious people who were taught their whole lives, like I was, that once I died, I would go to purgatory and it would be like hell, but I would have to pay for my sins and then I could come out. I believe we made that for ourselves because in truth, God is all loving and all forgiving and would never condemn anybody. So another message is that most of us become spiritual rather than religious. We are very cautious of a religion that tells you if you do this, you're going to hell. If you do that, you're going to hell, because it's not true. There is no hell unless you want to make one yourself.
There's no hell unless you want to make one yourself.
Yeah, there's, of course, there's good energy and bad energy. And on the other side, if you don't want to be in heaven, if you don't want to, we've still got free will. We've always got free will, and God doesn't make you do anything. So I'm sure there's probably a space, on the other side for people who prefer negative energy, and their choice is to go do that. But after all the millions of people the people who have had the near-death experiences, not one person that I've been able to determine has come back and said they were judged. Nobody. Not one person said, God judged me. They get a life review. We all get a life review. And that's just like having a movie of your whole life, and you get to see how it was. And that's super interesting. And then they turn it around and show it to you in a different light, meaning that you now get to feel what it was like to experience you on earth from the other people's point of view. So if you are a kind, loving person, you will get to see in that life review how that person that you were talking to was encouraged or made happy by the good you were doing, by the kindness you were showing. But if you were not such a nice person and you're hurting people, you're going to get to share that pain that you inflicted on others. And that's not a judgment. It's more like a karma. What you put out, you get back. And it's just to understand what your life meant. Another thing that most of us believe and accept is that we all start off in heaven. We're all just parts of God. We're all spirit. and we choose to come down to earth, and we want to learn things. That earth is like school. And so we choose our soulmates to come down and interact with. And we come, I'm sure I'm learning patience, because boy, I sure get to practice that one a lot. So it's just, it's a very different way of living, knowing that you've planned your own life, and that now when things come up that I'm not so crazy about, I can stop and say, instead of saying, why is God doing this to me? I can say, wow, I wonder why I chose this one. This is hard. What am I supposed to learn? And one of the things we learn that's so useful is empathy. Because every time something bad or just disaster befalls you, you now have this empathy that you can share with other people that have disasters befall them. So it's just a very different way of living, and knowing that for sure once you die, you're going home, and home is being with God, and it's wonderful. There's nothing to fear about death.
Okay. Is that the reason why in your memoir you said, or you title your book A Misfit in Hell?
Yeah.
A
Because
Misfit
every
in Hell.
time they told me to do something, they would ask me to do things that were immoral, or what I thought was immoral or hurtful. And I would say, no, I'm not going to do that. And so that was the misfit in hell thing. And as far as heaven expat, that has to do with all of us starting off in heaven, coming down to earth to do our work, and then going back to heaven. That's what an expatriate does.
Within that space, how many days did you spend from where you describe as hell to transitioning to heaven? How many days did it take you to go through that space, or that journey?
There's no time over there, so there's no way to tell.
Okay.
There's just no
it just
time.
happens.
It happens. I was in the coma almost 3 weeks. So it could have happened any time in there. There can be people that have a near-death experience that lasts 5 minutes, but they feel like they're gone for 5 years because so much has happened to them. It's very weird. It's hard to come back, and then have your life understanding of life so changed now. It's like going to another planet when you come back, because you're used to being in this other realm, this other way of existing. And so this feels kind of foreign for a while, and then you get used to it again, but you still never forget how wonderful heaven is.
Wow. Interesting. And
Yeah.
when you came out of the coma, were you able to explain yourself to the family members who were in the hospital, who were praying for you, who were making sure that you were okay to be able to come back from the coma? Were you able to explain yourself to them?
I couldn't. For a long time, I couldn't talk. It took about 5 days to put a device in me so that I could talk. And then I was just in short, they didn't want to hear about it. It upset them to think that I had had that experience. They didn't understand it. And that's another thing that made it hard. Nobody would listen to me.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Now, the other thing I'm sorry. Go ahead.
all right, go ahead.
Well, the other thing that when I got back, and it had been back for quite a while, I knew I did not want to go back in that situation. And I said, I prayed very much about how the thou shalt nots had not worked for me. And I needed something positive to live the rest of my life with. I didn't want to be negative anymore. And I was told to be loving, kind, merciful, forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. And they said, Kathy, if you can't remember all that, just be loving and kind. And so that's what I hope people take away from this. It's so much gentler. It's so much easier to live your life when you can let go of being jealous and angry and all that, and just take a breath and say, wow, I'm just going to be loving and kind in this situation or this day or whatever. And it's amazing how the energy around you then changes, because when you're kind and understanding and you're listening and you're forgiving, people kind of relax around you. and they feel safe and they feel loved. And so you find yourself building almost a little community of people around you that are kinder too. They can't help it. So if everybody in the world would take a Let's Be Kind Day, I think it would be great.
That would be great. That would be great. But before transitioning into this space, before going into this experience, you were a staunch Christian and you believed in heaven and hell, right? Yes. So after your experience, what can you say about this thing? What can you say? Do you still believe the heaven and hell still exist, and then therefore whatever we do with our lives, it gets to a point where when we live, whether we die before God comes or whatever it is, we are going to give account of whatever we are doing with our lives?
We have the life review. That's all. And you just get to understand. But yeah, and there's no punishment. You just get to feel how it was. So if somebody like Hitler he did have a life review, he gets to feel all the pain, all the sorrow, all the horror for everything he caused, all those millions of people, their families, all of that. He gets to feel that. Now, that's not a judgment or a punishment. That's just, he put out, he gets back. So what more do you do to the guy, right? I mean, so in our lives, that just encourages us when we have a chance to maybe, I don't know, pick up somebody's wallet and not return it, Okay, so when you get your life review, you get to feel how that poor guy was when he went out and his wallet's missing. Now he can't pay the babysitter. Now he can't get gas. You get to feel all his pain. That's because you caused it. So you get to feel it. So in this life then, from now on, I really look at that seriously. I have a choice wherever I can, somebody cuts me off in traffic, and I want to lay on the horn or shake my fist. I just take a deep breath and I say, have a nice day,
Nice day.
Because I would rather have that sort of, on my life review, I would rather feel that guy saying, wow, I probably shouldn't have done that. Thanks, lady. That kind of thing. You can change your world a little bit at a time.
So whatever we are doing here, it will get to that point where our lives will be played back to us. It will be reviewed back to us. And then that is when we will feel it, whether we did something right with our lives or we did something bad with our lives. But it's not like we are throwing you into a certain kind of fire to destroy you because maybe you did sin on earth or you caused harm to somebody. That is not the issue.
That's right. There is no place like that. And God is all loving, all forgiving. And so all we do is just understand what our lives meant. And then there's always reincarnation. I mean, from what I can understand, we can come down hundreds to thousands of places, and not just Earth. I mean, there's billions of planets out there. There's a lot of other places we go. And I've been told that Earth is the toughest gig. Only the brave souls come here because this is hard. It's really hard here. So, we should be proud of ourselves that we chose to come down on this ridiculous planet.
Did we choose ourselves or God brought us here?
We're just, what was I thinking?
Yes.
I'm not doing this again, I'll tell you. So, yeah, if you can look at it with that sense of humor and understand it's not a joke, but it's not that serious either. We'll just do the best we can. That's all you got to do. You pick this life. You pick the people you interacted with. You and I decided we're friends. I'm going to be busy here. You're be busy here. But for 1 hour, we'll get together on Earth and we'll sit down and we'll just touch base with each other. And so we did.
Wow. So how do you differentiate between spirituality and being religious?
Religious to me meant they said I had to go to church on Sunday. I had to give 10% to the church, whatever it was, or else I will go to hell. Because man does not have the power to tell God what to do. All right. And God is all loving. God is love and forgiving. So a church cannot tell me I'm going to hell if there isn't one. It's just a way to control people. is the way I look at it. So anything that I can't tell, like I can't tell other people what to do, but I would suggest if they are in a situation where if somebody in authority over you tells you they have the power to send you to hell, they're wrong. It's not true. And they may not know that. They may believe that, but it's not true. No, but no, you've got free will. You can do whatever you want, and then you get to feel whatever good you put out and what hurt you've incurred on other people, and that God is not judging. Nobody judges.
Okay.
It's really hard to wrap your mind around. I mean, this is 25 years I've been working on this.
Yeah, I know, because what we know is like what you're saying. That is why I keep asking some of these questions, because what we know is that, from the Bible, there is hell, there is heaven, and then whatever you are doing with your life, yes, it gets to a point where whether you die before God arrives or not, or you meet God at the point of your death, whichever way it is, there will be a day where, so I believe in that accountability aspect, like you say, your life will be reviewed to you. And then I know that once your life has been reviewed, it means that whether good or bad, it will depend on where you go, whether you go on the left side or you go on the right side. So now, as you are giving me this perspective, and so I want to, okay, this is also another dimension to it, or there is one truth about what God says or not.
Well, there's millions of people all over the planet, different cultures, different religions, no religions. They all come back with the same story. And we didn't get on the phone and say, hey, this is the story we're going to tell everybody. This has been going on for centuries. And we don't make this stuff up. We've experienced it. We know it. That God is it's just love over there. It's joy and love and bliss, and there's lots to do, and you get to see all the people you love and your pets, and it's like being in a play, and you wrote the play, and you're playing the part, and when the play's over, you go to your real life, and our real home is with God, in what we call heaven.
Wow. So after you return, is it people have different kind of ideas about God, religion, and sometimes the afterlife. So how did your experience these things you are describing, how did it change, or what kind of understanding do you have about God now?
Everything I thought I knew was not right. So it's taken a lot of time, and I need to be around those other people that understand. They really help one another. We have annual conferences, and 700-800 people show up, and that's just in person. And then online, there's just so many people you can't believe. And it's so exciting to go to these conferences because everybody knows and believes the same thing. It's great. You don't have to try and fit in to your old life, because very many people that come back get divorced because they're a different person and their spouse no longer recognizes, it's very, very difficult to come back after something like this that totally changes everything you think and everything you thought you knew, but we do it.
Okay, so
I don't know.
Life after death, you went through a phase. Now you were able to come back. Let's talk about life after death. How does it look like, and what changed, for instance, in your day-to-day routine, what you used to do after you experienced that afterlife?
In the afterlife, everybody looks young. You're a spirit, but you can look like whatever you want, so people recognize each other. There's no bodies, all right? That one thing where they say, okay, there's going to be the resurrection of the dead. There's no, spoiler alert, there's no bodies in heaven. There's no bodies are part of the earth, just your spirit. We're like in a car. Your body is your car, and you on earth, and you're driving around in your car, but then you get out and you go to heaven and you leave the car here. You don't need the car. So over there on the other side, it's just it's kind of like we're down here with this little tiny human brain, all right? This big. So we can only understand so much. And it's not much, because what's over there is just unfathomably huge and intricate, but we get this kind of mind wipe when we come down, so that we can live on this planet. So that's different. You try and feel like you're putting your big spirit back in this little tiny body, and you're trying to incorporate all this knowledge you now have in this little tiny brain.
Yeah.
So putting on a shoe that's too tight, it's not comfortable being back.
Okay, so
It's getting
you become like a fresh human being, or like a fresh
yeah,
spirit, and everything about you becomes new.
yeah. And you remember the old things, but they don't fit anymore. Like my religion didn't fit, and the way I interacted with people didn't fit, and maybe the job you're doing doesn't fit. It changes everything. You know too much almost to still be on this planet. You think, I know about spirits. That's really what's changed a lot. When someone has died, you think, oh, I'll never see them again, or they're way up there in heaven. No, they're right here. They're right here with you. Anytime you think of a spirit, that spirit's there. My father died about 3 years ago, and he and I are very close. And a lot of things that the spirits do to let you know they're there, like flickering lights or leaving things that weren't there before. Excuse me. My dad's great about helping me find things that I lose. I'll just tell him I've lost my keys or whatever. I can't find them. I've looked everywhere. And then I just get quiet and I let him kind of float into my mind. And he'll say something like, your pocket. And I think, pocket. And I go to the coat closet and I reach in there and there's my keys. So you get this whole closeness to departed people that's so comforting. When you think, oh my gosh, my dad died, I'll never see him again. Well, no, he's right there. That's a comfort that you get coming back, is a closeness to the spirits now. That's different.
Interesting conversation. Interesting. You mentioned in your book that you've gained a whole new perspective on trials and tragedy.
Yeah.
How do you now view suffering?
There's suffering. Suffering, I've been told, is something that you almost bring on yourself because you won't let go of it. I don't know how. Okay, something happens. Your car breaks down. You love that car. Now you don't know how to get to work. And so it's a fact. The car broke down. You're going to have to do something about it. So if you're prompted to say, okay, well, then I'll borrow my sister's car, or I'll do this or that, you get out of the suffering mode into, I'll take care of it. It's just a car. You look at things different. Things that used to seem so important, they're really not. What's important is how you treat people.
What is important is how you treat people. That's God says that, the end of everything that we are doing is that love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
That is the ultimate goal. That is the ultimate instruction or command. Love your neighbor as yourself. And once you do that,
But you got to love yourself. You have to love yourself first to be able to love somebody like yourself.
You've
got to treat yourself well too. Know you're a spirit. Know that you're good. You're positive. You chose this life to learn things. You chose to be white, black, tall, living here, living there, whatever. You chose all that for a reason. So, and the other thing I love about this is we are, a spirit having a human experience. So inside each of us is light. If you see those orbs of light, I've seen them. We're an orb of light. You look just like me. We're exactly the same. But we can discern each other, if we are in heaven. But what we've got here is a costume. You chose that costume. I chose this costume. And it makes it so much easier when you're a crowd of people, you're meeting people, to see their spirit, to see their light and say, wow, that's an interesting costume they got on. But they're the same as you inside. I love that. I love that. That's when you feel like humanity is one thing and not race, creed, color, religion. It's just clothes. They're not the real person. The real person is love.
You also touch on mourning, and how can someone who has lost a dear one, how can that person, for instance, find peace going through your story or listening to your story?
Yeah. I lost a baby when she was just teeny tiny, and that was very hard to get over. But
Sorry
now
about
that I
that.
know, yeah, I know that she chose. She was a soul. We're all the same age up there. Yeah, we're all mature souls. So I says, I want to have that experience for whatever reason. And I found out later why. And she said, this soul, who's a really good, soulmate of mine, says, look, I'm kind of done with Earth, but I see her saying, I'll go down for 9 months and 2 days, and then I'm out of there because I don't want to stay, but I will help you learn. So when I lost that child and people would say terrible things like, oh, don't worry, you'll have another one. That was so dismissive and so not understanding my pain. Within the next couple of years, I had 2 girlfriends that each lost babies. And people would say to them, don't worry, you'll have it, you'll get over it, blah, blah, blah. But they knew they could come to me and tell me, and I could say, I feel your pain. I know how horrible this is. Give them a hug. And they say, how do you do it? It's been 2 years. And I said, will I ever get over this? No, you'll never get over it, but you'll learn to live with it. And you know that you'll see her again. You'll see the baby again because I'm sure of that. So that's that empathy. That's such a wonderful gift that you can look at when something terrible, quote, quote, happens to you. You will be able to help other people because now you know how they feel. And there's such a comfort that you can give to somebody else that way. Yeah. It's not just about you.
Wow. Do you feel afraid to die again?
No, absolutely not. No, nobody wants to be killed in a car crash or have a horrible illness or anything. But it's funny. A lot of the people that come back go to hospice, go work for hospice as volunteers. I did. I signed right up because I thought these people are so lucky. They're going to die soon and they get to go home. And I was so homesick. And so I can remember a couple people that I was helping. They said, why are you so cheerful around here? We're all going to die. And I says, you're so lucky. And they say, what? And I says, I just came from there. And it is so fantastic. I can't wait to get back. And they go, really? And yeah, cool. So it took their fear away. Being able to say, she's been there. This one lady says, oh, I'm never going to see my mother again. And I says, yeah, you will. She's going to be with you all the time in spirit, and you'll see her. Well, how do you know? I said, I was just there. I saw my friend who had been dead, and he looks great. And she said, she turned to her husband and says, I'm going to see my mom again. Oh, thank God. So, yeah, it's a positive thing to be on the other side.
It means that for all those who are dead now are seeing themselves again.
Oh yeah,
and so they are having a life afterwards. So for those of us here, we should not be worried about them.
Oh, they're waiting for you. They're with you now in spirit. They help you out. And then if you dream about them, sometimes you'll hear a song that was the song that was the one that you used to play together. They're always giving you little signals that they're there. And you can even ask for them. You can say, okay, I want to see a bluebird on that tree in the morning if you're really there. So many times you'll look out there and you've got your sign. Yeah, we're not alone. They're always with us.
They're always with us.
They're just waiting for us. And then they come get you. There's, again, the hospice people, when the hospice people work for a long time, they get to where they can see the lights coming in. And it's usually in the room up in the corner. And they'll see a couple of lights come in just before the person passes. And I told my dad, I said, he died of COVID 3 years ago. He was 97. He was ready to go. But we always said, I said, whoever goes first, come back and give a sign. Okay, you have to come back and tell who came to get you, because there's at least one person, and sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 people, spirits, come to bring you home. And so he passed away. And it was only a week later, I was talking to my publisher for my book, who was also a medium. She can talk to spirits. And we were talking about this, trouble with money that we were having, and we were disagreeing. And all of a sudden she just says, oh, your dad's here. I'm on the phone. I says, what? And she says, no, your dad's here. Long story short, he wanted you to know that his mom and sister came to get him. I says, how cool is that? They had both died. And I thought, how wonderful. I mean, she had no idea that I had asked that. He just talked to her. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
I don't know, but you are giving me a whole perspective, a new perspective about some of these things. Maybe I also have to go deeper into it to research some of these near-death experiences. What actually, different people have gone through some of these things. Also have, like you are saying, that you have all come together to form a group, and you meet, you discuss, and you are almost on the same page, you're almost on the same level, saying this about the same things.
Yeah. And we're so happy. You go to those conferences for 3-4 days, and the joy and the happiness and lightness, everybody all over the world, it's just hugs and listening to each other tell their stories. And then the worst part is when we have to leave. Nobody wants to leave because you've got this little bit of heaven feeling all around, and you got to go out back in the real world, and all that sucks. You can't wait till the next year and get together with all these wonderful, happy, joyful people.
Okay. So because God is loving, there is no place of distraction for anyone. And the fact that once you have transitioned through this earth, your life will be revealed to you. It's going to give you that feeling. Whether you cause pain to somebody, you are going to also feel that pain. So that will be more or less like your punishment at a point. So is it a place full of punishment, regrets, or happiness? Or it's a mixed feeling? Because I know all those people who go there are not like they all did good on earth. Some of them did certain things, and the feelings will be different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're a murderer, or you did something, and you get to feel, you will feel the pain of those people that you killed and their family, and you will say, wow, I went down to earth to learn things. Now they've learned something, that doesn't feel good. That's destructive. And it's hard. We were so different in spirit than we are in human. It's hard we try and make God like us. We're made in the image of God, meaning we are part of God. But as humans, we make God vengeful, and we make God angry, and all these things because humans are. But God's not like that. So it's hard down here to understand. And that's why it's just so trippy to finally be on the other side. And then you go, you finally see the rules, you finally see behind the curtain, and you think, man, I really fell for that. I really believed X, Y, Z, but it wasn't true. It wasn't true. And so I'm so glad to be home. But it was a good trip. You learn stuff. And that's what we want to do, because in heaven, you're perfect. So this is like going to Disneyland. You want to go to be scared, on the rides. You want to go, win $100 when you're throwing darts. This is an amusement park of sorts where you just get to experience. And it seems like a good idea at the time when you start off. You get down here and you kind of go,
yes. So almost all the stuff that goes on here, right? So now, once we are up there, it means that we are no more humans. Our spirit being, which was here in a human form, have now left us, and it has gone to its original place.
So you can go someplace again. So where are you going to go next time? You can go back to Earth. You're going to go someplace in another galaxy. You're going to be, it's another thing that's different when you come back, what's different? Aliens, right? They're just part of God. They're spirit. They just chose to be Martians, or they chose to be Plutonians. We chose to be humans. So none of us are really aliens. We're dressed in alien costumes, but we're really all souls that are pieces of God. We're all still brothers and sisters or whatever. So that, it makes that whole thing about aliens seem very different now too.
So this led you to write a book, and you titled
Wait.
it Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expert.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the refreshing thoughts in that book, and how is it doing? Is it doing in that book? What are some of also the reviews that you receive from the readers?
It's I think I'm at 4.5 stars. I don't know, 170 something reviews. I want to congratulate you right off the bat by being a podcaster. When I woke up in that hospital and I said, I've got too much left to do, and how am I going to do it? It's podcasters. That came very much after, I was out. And so that's how I've been able to get my message out. I've had over 2.5 million views. So that's people. How would I have ever been able to share that with 2.5 million people if it weren't for the podcasters? So God works in strange ways. So yeah, you're very helpful in what you do. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And your book is on Amazon. On which platforms are they?
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, just about any place you buy a book. And I've got a website. It's the same address, www.misfitandhelltoheavenexpat.com. And if you've got a question or something, just go and there's a place to leave a question, and I'll get back to you. Okay.
If you just have, or you just maybe had just one message to leave with the world, what message would it be?
Be loving and kind. That's all you got to do.
Right.
That covers everything.
Right. Be loving and kind. God is loving, so you have to also be loving. Right. So now, how does a meaningful life look like to you? How does a meaningful life look like to you after all these experiences?
I found a quote that I just love, and it says, usefulness is the greatest joy of life. To feel useful. What you're doing is useful. I'm spending a lot of time at our senior center here. I'm being useful. I'm talking to people. I'm being useful. And that gives you purpose. Everybody needs to find their purpose. And we're all here to help one another and to be loving and kind. So it's just that simple. It's not about money and fame and power and all of that stuff. It's about being a good person.
Thank you so much for coming on the King Obed podcast to share your insight into this, because you've given us, especially myself, a whole new dimension and perspective to some of the things we know, we have read in the Bible, and then we keep hearing in the church and stuff. And yes, anyone who is a follower of Christ, yes, knows most of these things, that those heaven and hell, we receive punishment and stars and those kind of things. Yeah, but for you who have experienced some of these things, you have also given us your side of it, what you've seen, what you've experienced. And I think that yes, it resonates well. Like you're saying, everything that we have to do is that we have to be love and kind, and that is what the whole gospel is about. It's about love. The whole gospel is just about love, and God is love. Show love to humanity. Be kind to humanity. Other than that, whatever you do to your fellow human being, like you said, the law of karma applies. When you go and your life is being reviewed, if you cause pain to somebody, that pain will be reversed to you, and that is when you are going to also feel it now or at that moment. Yes. What will be your final words to us, to the audience, and to anyone who get hold of this video or audio?
Lighten up. Don't lose your sense of humor. Just be a light to the world.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You've been
Thank you so much for coming on board. And yes, for viewers, listeners, we've delved so deep into the near-death experience of Kathy McDaniel, who in 2000 had this turn down of her life, went through this series or this phase of life, and then she shares her experiences with hell, heaven, what you do with your life here. As humans here, We are spirit living in human form here. Whatever we do with our lives, at the point when we live or we exit this scene, our lives will be reviewed and you're going to feel the same, whether good or bad. So we should be kind to each other. We should be loving to each other, and the world will be a better place. So thank you so much for listening. Follow us on the King Obed Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, all the other platforms, and get a copy of the book called Misfit in Heaven to Heaven Experts by Kathy McDaniel. So thank you so much. Until we meet again. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye.